Hey folks, how are you? It is Tuesday, so you know what that means. Welcome to another Featured Friday. Today we're going to talk about the difference between rows and blocks. This is kind of a WordPress thing more than a LifterLMS thing, but in the end, when you're developing courses and lessons, everything that's a WordPress thing becomes a course builder thing. And with that, I'll turn that over to Emily. Emily, tell us about rows and blocks.
Thank you, Kurt. There's not a lot to talk about today. We're talking about the row versus block formatting. When using the WordPress block editor, you may notice that you have a couple of options when grouping areas together. On my page, I have simply grouped two images, but you can group text and images, you can group headings and images, testimonials, any blocks can be grouped in certain ways. And blocks can be converted to and from one another. So when we're selected on a row block, for example, we go over to the right-hand side. We can see transform to group. We have a row right now. We can transform to a stack or transform to a grid. And with the row block option, it's going to take everything within the row and try to format it on a horizontal axis. So you can see my two images, they're simply placed within the row, and with the stack, they're placed vertically. So this might feel a little bit intuitive, but we also have grid as another option. So if we swap to a grid, we'll see that we can define the column width of the grid, and we can define other kind of basic features. But this will be sort of a boxy layout, and we'll see that if I were to put another set of images on here, it would respect the spacing of the grid. And so row versus stack is simply a way to align your items for mobile formatting, for desktop formatting. Thinking about grouping your items in a horizontal or vertical basis may feel a little bit simple, but with the design process, you want to think about what you want your users to see first. If you want your users to scroll past a section very quickly, you might want to put a bunch of horizontal items where you could optionally zoom in and say, hey, what's this guy doing? What's she doing? And maybe we have like headings, maybe we have feature benefits rather than just photos. Maybe we have logos. With logos, for example, like as seen on NBC, as seen on Yahoo, we probably don't want to stack those vertically. We're going to want to put those horizontal next to each other so that when we have like 6 logos, they will all stack in line and look really good. So you can see with the stack, or the row rather, no matter how many of these little characters I add, they're just going to stack in that horizontal. And with the stack option, it's going to go vertically. What do you think about these layout blocks? They feel a little bit basic, but what do you think about them, Kurt?
Well, I think there's some very special use cases where I've seen clients get very frustrated, so I assume many users do. You know, when you trying to format, like sometimes in a course or a lesson, you'll have like text and media, and then media and text, and then text and media, then media and text. And it looks great on the computer, right? Because now you've got like this flowing thing, and you think that, you know, you're being more interactive with the student and you're causing, you know, a pattern disruption with visibly and all these things, which is great, right? If you're into the learning sciences, that completely makes sense. But then when you look at it on your phone, you end up with like headline, picture, picture, headline, picture, picture, because when it's stacked based on the breakpoint, the order wasn't what you anticipated. It's stacked based on a certain order on the page, but not thinking that text should be above the image, right? Or text should be above the media. And so one of the things that's really important to consider with Emily showing us the difference between rows and stacks is that you can go in and manually, purposely edit those different breakpoints to stack in the order that you want them to, rather than having them get out of order. That's where I've seen stacking really come in handy, because you can design each page for the desktop, the tablet, and the mobile version. And so knowing that we can be responsive in our designs and then get the flow of information that we're seeking from an educational standpoint, I think this skill is something that, while seems basic, is one of those things that can really frustrate people if they haven't taken the time to learn the basics.
100%. 100%.
I feel like I spoke too long for a Feature Friday event.
No, it's okay. This is a light episode.
Awesome. Well, folks, I think that kind of rounds things up for us. They've got rows and they've got stacks. If you've heard other people teach in the WordPress space, they say that, everything on the internet is just rows and blocks. And it's like, once you start thinking like a masonry, like start thinking like a brick building, and you just, okay, rows, and then there's blocks inside the rows. What we're talking about today falls kind of like in that wheelhouse, right? We have rows, those rows are full of blocks, but in a display perspective, maybe sometimes we want the blocks to be on top of each other instead of next to each other. Kind of like if you were filling in bricks around an open window frame or something. Everything's got its reason, and I hope that this was of value to you. Emily, thank you so much. Folks,
Yeah.
This is it. We'll see you next week for the next Feature Friday on a Tuesday.